Skyscraper is the latest blockbuster that adds to 2018's and Dwayne Johnson's considerable crop of action movies. It's about a former FBI agent and amputee, Will Sawyer, played by The Rock, who's been hired as a security consultant for Hong Kong's newest, boldest, and tallest building yet, the Pearl. However, when the building is attacked by terrorists, Will's family is trapped inside, 100 stories above the ground, and Will being framed for the crime itself. Now, Will has to figure out how to both save his family and to clear his name. On Rotten Tomatoes, the movie is currently on a rotten rating of 50% with an average critics rating of 5.2. 79% of audiences liked it, giving it a rating of 3.8 out of 5. On Metacritic, it's on a Metascore of 51 and a user score of 5.3. And finally, on IMDb, it currently has a user rating of 6.2. So in general, critics seem to find the movie very average, while audiences seem to rate it slightly on the positive side. Here are my thoughts on the movie. Let's start with the positive first, the visuals. The visual effects of this movie were actually pretty decent. I really liked the shot at the beginning of the movie where The Rock was standing at the top of the Pearl looking at a breathtaking view of Hong Kong. I also felt that the Pearl was a great concept for a state-of-the-art skyscraper, if you will, built in one of the world's wealthiest cities. The rooms, the park, the technologies in the building were all conceptualized very, very well. I also like that throughout the action scenes in the later parts of the film, the audience was able to see the commotion and traffic on the ground. This gave the action scenes a grounded reality, and some of these scenes did make me a little dizzy seeing how far above the ground the action was taking place. Speaking of action, I also really like The Rock in this movie. And let's be honest, The Rock is more or less always a positive in his movies, regardless of how crappy they are. And a lot of people complain about an oversaturation of his movies recently, and I really can't disagree with that. But The Rock always makes sure to give audiences at least some bang for their buck. And although most of the action scenes in Skyscraper weren't as original as I'd hoped, The Rock sold each and every one of them. He's one of the only people who audiences believe is able to fight off 20 bad guys while missing a leg and crawling outside windows 1,000 feet in the air using duct tape. The scene where he climbs the crane was probably the best in the movie and definitely prompted me to reevaluate my own workout routine. Personally, I was rooting for The Rock's resilience and courage throughout the entire movie. So those two parts of Skyscraper were pretty much the only standout positive aspects of the film for me. And while I did like other parts of the movie, such as Neve Campbell and her acting, they really don't warrant a full section. And so with that said, let's move on to the parts that nagged me throughout the 102-minute runtime. The villains. Yeah, the villains in Skyscraper were pretty much the cookie-cutter and extremely forgettable bad guys we'd come to expect in almost every mediocre action film. And what frustrated me the most was the lack of backstory and confusing motivation of the villains. All I remember is something about the bad guys wanting a hard drive from Dow that contains their money laundering schemes. And in my opinion, that's hardly something worth destroying a $5 billion building over. The movie also never seems to fully explain the involvement and motivations of Ben, a character who could have been made so much more compelling. The impossible. I mean, I love you, Dwayne, but let's be honest, you should have died at least 5 times, if not more. Yeah, I know it's an action blockbuster, but come on, at least make some of the action a little more realistic. There's no point in caring if you know the hero will survive a 50-foot leap 1,000 feet in the air. And since when was Neve Campbell so strong that she could pull herself back onto a beam with the 60-year-olds on her back? Speaking of Neve, let's talk about the tropes in this movie. There was a scene at the very beginning of the movie, you probably know the one if you've watched it, where The Rock fixes his wife's phone by simply rebooting it. And boy, oh boy, did we all know that it would be brought back into the spotlight later in the movie. And without fail, Neve's character attributes bringing back the fire extinguishing technologies to rebooting the system. I mean, come on, it doesn't get cheesier than that. And to just list a few other tropes, the good guy helping the bad guys after a family member is taken. The rebuilding scene at the end of the movie to give the ending a slightly optimistic outlook. The character with virtually no background on a case pinpointing exactly where a shootout with wanted criminals will take place. The hero suffering a few minor cuts and scratches after literally hurling himself across a a 50-foot chasm into the skyscraper. A piece of technology, the iPad, that literally serves no purpose other than to show that a seemingly good guy is bad. The villain's plan taking just long enough for the hero to be able to save his family. A flash drive containing the money laundering schemes of relatively tech-savvy bad guys. The villains mercilessly killing nobodies, only to keeping the hero and his family alive. A piece of a burning building falling, so that it poses some threat to the hero, but only enough to create some tension. And the hero managing to save his daughter even after being clearly behind her by, a mile and a half. And so those were only the most notable tropes that I caught in the movie. Yeah, so actually not quite a few. So those were my thoughts on Skyscraper. And although I did like a few aspects of the film, the feeling that I've seen this movie before, along with some glaring flaws, kept me from giving the movie a positive score. And in the end, I give Skyscraper a 5 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please make sure to hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe for new movie reviews and content weekly. Also, let me know in the comments which other movies you'd like for me to watch and review. Until next time.